Senator Ince, you have the floor.
Madam President, I rise to support the 2018 Appropriation Bill, commonly called the estimates that is before this honorable chamber. Madam President, the estimates for 2018-2019 speaks to the management of government revenue and expenditure for the financial year that ends on March 31st, 2019. Madam President, it is interesting that Senator Walcott will speak to the issues within this Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018, an outstanding document, a document which, as I always say, and I will continue to say, that it seems to me when this country is at a crossroad, when it seems that our children and our families are challenged, the Democratic Labour Party is in office to guide the people of Barbados and to guide this country. And this Sustainable Recovery Plan is a demonstration of why the Democratic Labour Party is the party of choice for the people of Barbados. And I will say it here, and I will repeat it again, that whensoever that date is announced, the people of Barbados are going to return the Democratic Labour Party to office as the party of choice to guide this country. Madam President, it is amazing that it seems the senator was puzzled over understanding what we call Roman numbers, Roman numerals, because he went from 1, skip 2, skip 3, and also skip 6, but went to the BWU General Secretary and also read Mr. Charles Herbert, but he skipped the page. As I said, maybe he had difficulty in understanding these numbers. Page 6, Mr. Cedric Murray, President, Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Association of Barbados. Madam President, and I'm going to read what the President of the Congress of Trade Union and Staff Association of Barbados state in this document, Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018. And this is what the President stated. The Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Association of Barbados, C2SAB, approves, and I'm going to read, approves of the Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018, which was developed after discussion and consultation among the social partners and its committees. I would like him to explain what it means. Pursuant to this intended formulation, as announced in the 2017 Annual Budgetary and Financial Statement, and further agreement at the full meeting of the Barbados Social Partnership on August the 11th, 2017. This plan is the result of rigorous, you heard the word, rigorous discussions over the past 4 months, and represents the hope and aspirations of the social partners for the recovery and growth of the Barbadian economy. The Congress welcomes the proposed formation of the Special Subcommittee of the Social Partnerships, charged with the implementation of the initiatives contained in the plan, and pledges its full, Madam President, participation. I'm going to repeat that. And pledges its full participation. The Congress believes that the formulation and implementation of the Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018 will strengthen the collaborative mechanism of the Barbados Social Partnership model. Madam President, I read no more. But what I am saying, Madam President, is that this is the plan. And I want Barbadians and this Senate, and this is what these estimates speaks to. Where we came from. Where we came from 2008 until present. And we must recall, Madam President, that in 2008, this Democratic Labour Party administration, we came to office in the height of a global recession. A global recession. Not a recession, Madam President, that was driven by the normal theory of economics that says if your GDP declined over 2 quarters, you're in recession. But we came into a recession, Madam President, that was driven by the collapse of the global financial industries around the world. And as a result of that collapse, and Barbados being part of, and I always use 2 words, that we are not isolated nor insulated from economic activities. And when we look at the structure of the Barbados economy, no one can say that our problems are all homegrown. Madam President, we do have challenges. We have economic challenges. But let us look at the structure of the Barbados economy as demonstrated in the estimates. And I have said it over and over again, what is the structure of the Barbados economy? And we must remember, Madam President, that this economy is import-driven. And what do I mean by import-driven? That our imports has outstripped our exports over a 5-year period, more so in the area of the consumer durables. And our export sector is not of such that would create a surplus in the current account. So we do export. So when I hear these rumblings, and as I term them, dry coconut speeches, that when you examine the speech, it isn't worth making sugar cake, coconut punch, or even a good coconut bread. These spoiled dry coconut speeches, Madam President. But what the estimate speaks to, and it tells us where we came from. But let us look carefully at the structure of the Barbados economy. We depend on tourism, and I have said it over and I'm going to repeat it, that we function in 2 economic environments, an external environment and an internal environment. And what is that external environment, Madam President? It's an environment that is driven by one of our main sources of revenue, tourism, driven by the international business sector, driven by direct foreign investment, driven by remittances, Madam President, and our production, our energy sector is influenced not by oil, because we are not an importer of oil. It is influenced by what I term the high-end distillates, diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, and kerosene, all imported into this country, and they are all located in that external environment. That is the structure, and that is how we generate our revenue. Our main earners of revenue is located in the external economic environment, in which we have little say or influence. But what we do is that we have put systems in place to benefit from the growth, Madam President, of those sectors that are located in the external environment. And this estimate speaks to the measures taken by government to minimize, Madam President, the exposure that the economy faces in relation to that hostile and speculative global environment. We say to the people of Barbados, Madam President, that we were going to restructure and diversify this economy. We said to the people of Barbados, it's going to take some time. We said that we came into office, Madam President, and we found a deficit that was unsustainable. And we said that we were going to gradually reduce the deficit without disrupting, without any major disruptions, without minimizing the social dislocation of families and businesses. That is what we say to the people of Barbados, that we were going to protect the most vulnerable, continue to provide critical services to the people of Barbados. And Madam President, what we did in the first, and I'm hearing this thing about failed initiatives, failed plans. We have 5 plans, Madam President. We made it absolutely clear that if we need to rewrite the plans as the economic environment changed, that we were going to do it. That none of the plans, none of the efforts put in place were written in concrete or stone. Now that is management. Those of us who understand what managing economy is. And the first thing we did, we established a $25 million tourism relief fund in order to stabilize the tourism sector. Because we said that we were going to diversify that sector, that we were going to look for new markets. And the parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Tourism is here, so I don't have to elaborate. She is more than able to discuss the tourism sector with us. But when we look at what was undertaken in the tourism sector, and the first individual, Madam President, the Barbados Labour Party criticized the initial tourism fund. It says it was a waste of time. But yet when the first individual who benefited from the fund was a Barbados Labour Party businessman, no candidate, that says the money wasn't enough. Madam President, then they came and says that the money wasn't enough. And the first recipient of the grant, of that $25 million grant, was a Barbados Labour Party businessman who is now a candidate for the Barbados Labour Party. Madam President, but we will deal with that another time. The estimates are too important to discuss that right now. Madam President, as I said, the steps taken. And as the environment became turbulent, Madam President, we decided, look, these are some of the things, your revenue, if your revenue is falling, if your revenue is declining, Madam President, and when we look at the losses in our corporation taxes, along with the increases in what we term our consumer durables, Madam President, action had to be taken. And what we did, we established the medium-term development strategy for Barbados. And within that medium term, because we said it is important to stabilize the economy, and within that medium-term development strategy, it was based on 3 broad principles, along with 20 objectives within the strategy. But like anything else, the Barbados Labour Party criticized it. But the fact remains that along with the medium-term development strategy, we also implemented the early warning signs. As far as our foreign reserves are concerned, as far as our debt is concerned, Madam President, we strengthened the debt unit in the Ministry of Finance. And had it not for those early warning signs that was established, Madam President, when the Honorable Dr. David Eswick was Minister responsible for Economic Affairs, it started there. And we continued we continued. And had it not for those early warning signs as established by this Democratic Labour Party, this country would have been worse off today. And that is why that on a daily basis we can monitor the debt situation, we can monitor the foreign reserves. Never happened before. And we learned our lesson when, under Sir Lloyd Erskine, that our foreign reserves went to approximately 2 weeks. And then under Tom Adams, when the foreign reserves went to 1.9 weeks. Madam President, we learned from that as a Democratic Labour Party, and that is why we put the early warning signs in place. That is why we put the early warning signs in place. We have learned from our mistakes, and that those foreign reserves are critical. But when people speak of foreign reserves, Madam President, what are we speaking about? What are we speaking about? There are individuals, Madam President, who like to use terms and words and references. Foreign reserves, Madam President, are those assets held by the central bank. And they are simply saying they are used to back liabilities, pay for imports, Madam President, and also influence the monetary policy of government. So, our foreign reserves, you may be able to hold your foreign reserves, Madam President, in a number of things: banknotes, bank deposits, bonds, treasury bills, gold reserves. But when we speak to the whole idea of declining foreign reserves, I asked the question, we have a benchmark of 12 weeks of foreign reserves. A benchmark. I have asked this question over and over again. What is the viable foreign reserves for Barbados? I have never seen it in a report. I have never seen it in a central bank report, Madam President. I also asked, what is the composition of the foreign reserves of Barbados? I have never seen it in a pie chart that says to me, this is the percentage of monies borrowed for foreign reserves. This is the percentage as a result of foreign direct investment. This is the percentage of X, Y, and Z. We always hear of how much money, 3 billion, 2 billion. And I have never seen, I went through the central bank reports. I have never seen a pie chart, a bar graph, a trend line. And I asked the question, with all the brilliant minds, all the brilliant economists in Barbados, tell me what is the most viable amount of foreign reserves for this country. Is it 6 weeks? Is it 8 weeks? Let us forget about the benchmark. You normally use benchmarks in anything. If you're doing asset management, you have to have a benchmark. If you're managing portfolios, Madam President, the benchmark is that your cash holdings within your investment portfolio should not go above 5%. But sometimes you rebalance. You rebalance your portfolio. So tell me what is the most viable foreign reserves for the Barbados economy that is average around an $8 billion GDP, gross domestic product. But we hear foreign reserves declining. But we must understand where our foreign reserves go. What is important, Madam President, is that prior to 1994, we never borrowed for foreign reserves. We earned foreign reserves. We made sure that our manufacturing sector and those critical sectors important for the development of Barbados were productive. But under a Barbados Labour Party administration, when interest rates were cheap on the international market, instead of developing and expanding our economic sectors, they allowed the manufacturing sector, they allowed the sugar sector to decline by 62%, and all the other critical sectors without a major restructuring and divesting. They didn't do it. But they borrowed because it was an easy way out. Madam President, it is important when you begin to speak about these things that you understand the meaning of the foreign reserve. Madam President, everybody says borrowings. So it was cheaper, without the knowledge that this money must be repaid. It wasn't grant funding. So no economic measures, despite the gurus that existed in the Barbados Labour Party, and the numbers don't lie. This is not my numbers. These are the numbers of the Central Bank and the other statistical departments within Barbados. And it shows that we did not borrow for foreign reserves prior to 1996, and from 1996 to 1998, we did not borrow, even in troubling times. And we borrowed for foreign reserves starting from 1999. We went to the foreign market and borrowed $150 million. You know what was the fiscal balance at the time, Madam President? $133.4 million. And we had a fiscal balance of 2.7%. A fiscal balance of 2.7%. That, in my opinion, was very manageable. But we looked for the easy way out by borrowing the money. So we borrowed the money. Then we went to 2000. And I always said that between 2000 and 2005 were the best financial years for Barbados and the Barbados Labour Party. Madam President, because between 2000 and 2000, and that's what these estimates are about. Where we came from, what we have achieved, how did we get to lower this deficit from a mid-range of 11%. That is achievement for any party, any government, without major disruption. Madam President, by 2000, we went to the international markets again and borrowed $200 million to prop up the foreign reserves. Now these are the gurus, you know. These are the gurus. The economic wizards, the cabinet of which Senator Walcott was part of. Madam President, and I'm also going to get to the sanitation authority that he was in charge, the senator was in charge of. Madam President, $200 million. You know what was the fiscal balance? $180.3 million. And we had a physical back percent to GDP of 3.5%. And they went to the market and borrowed $200 million. But I'm going to go through 2001. And we speak of management. I have said it over and over again, that the Barbados Labour Party applied the theory of economics, but committed financial terrorism in this country. And the numbers don't lie. They know how to apply the theory of economics. But let's look at the public finances. Madam President, during this period of time, they collected $10.7 billion in taxes. I'm going to repeat it. And I always call on them to challenge me. Not one of them don't write anything about it, because the facts are here. They borrowed, they collected $10.7 billion in taxes. Look around Barbados, Madam President, and tell me what we see for $10.7 billion, and out of the $10.7 billion, $3.7 billion was VAT alone, VAT receipts. And I asked Barbadians, they had a water authority worth $193 million without debt. And no talking about a sewage project. The money from water authority was supposed to do all of those capital works. Water authority had no debt, none. And we gave them a water authority worth $193 million. Look at the annual reports. And when we came to office, we found the water authority $125 million in accumulated deficits in debt. Water authority technically bankrupt, could not pay for oil, could not pay for diesel, and that is why we increased the water rates. So it's to protect the people of Barbados. That's what the estimates are about. That's what the estimates are about, Madam President. But when they borrowed, Madam President, they went up to 2005, 245 million, 206, 135.8 million. Small deficits. Madam President, they took $1,047,080,000 from the international market to prop up the foreign reserves, and we have to pay it back. I'm going to repeat it. I know we're speaking about foreign reserves in Barbados declining. When they borrowed and prop the reserves up, take out this $1,047,080,000 out of the foreign reserves, Madam President, and you would see that our foreign reserves were declining back then under a Barbados Labour Party. But it was propped up by false pretenses, by the economic gurus, saying to the people of Barbados that our foreign reserves are healthy. But you borrow it. And now the time has come that we said we are going to restructure and we were going to earn. And Madam President, what we are doing, we are seeing the results of positive economic growth. Positive economic growth. That is what we are speaking about. So the estimates, Madam President, has embraced all sectors. All sectors. And once, Madam President, that we have seen those positive signs in the economy, we sat with the social partners. And I have always said that it is important government sits with labor. It is important if we are going to succeed and carry the country forward. You cannot have labor and government at loggerheads. If not, we are going to defeat the purpose of growth and development. And within this plan, what I call the master plan, after we had gone through all of those challenges, government is saying we are now in recovery mode. Let us now revise and look at how best we can come up with a strategic plan. Now that the economy is in recovery mode, we are seeing positive signs. We are seeing a turnaround in the international business sector, where we were losing $200 million a year. We have restructured the Tourism Authority under heavy criticism from the opposition. Heavy criticism. And that is part of the Democratic Labour Party, Madam President, when we speak to these things. So this plan embraced the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Agriculture, all of the ministries that are playing an important role in the recovery of Barbados. This plan involves. And Madam President, the plan outlined 6 major strategies. 6. And these are similar to when we revised the medium-term development strategy. And we said build a comfortable net international reserves level by 2020. This is the plan for Barbadians. This is the plan that is going to carry Barbados forward. Achieve fiscal sustainability through a balanced budget. Accelerate real GDP growth to reach 3% by 2021. Madam President, our GDP growth in good times normally is around 3.25, 3.5%. Establish a creditable and sustainable debt management plan. Madam President, debt management. The Barbados Labour Party would always speak about the debt of the country. what it is. But let us speak of the important achievements of this administration when we look at December 2017 and compare our debt management strategy with what it was in 2016. Madam President, our current debt in 2016, the debt was $13,286,997,140. 2017, our debt, although it increased, is now $13,553,069,546. That is an increase of $266,072,406, Madam President. But what is important is that when you look at what happened within the debt portfolio and some of the challenges within the debt portfolio of Barbados, I have said it over and over again, that part of our challenge is that we are paying for unproductive debt. The $700 million in cost overruns created by the Barbados Labour Party, that is part of our debt portfolio. And when you are paying for unproductive debt, it increases your debt payments, your interest rates, because unproductive debt, it does not generate the type of revenue. This is unproductive debt. Madam President, let us look at the structure of the debt portfolio. As I said, $13.5 billion. Within, if we were to examine Barbados dollars, the portion of Barbados dollars is $10.8 billion, or 80% of the entire debt portfolio. In US dollars, $2.7 billion, or 20%. We have less than 1% in euro, which is $648,621. But what we should look at carefully, Madam President, is that we were able to bring the local loans, the debt of local loans, we were able to reduce local loans by $119,081,000 between 2016 and 17. That is an achievement, but you're not going to see this in any report. You don't speak about that. Madam President, for the external loans, which stood at $1,114,114,000,000, we were able to reduce that, Madam President, by $11.4 million over the year 2016-2017. They speak about government saving bonds, Madam President, and we were also able to reduce the borrowings by $6.5 million. These are the achievements, Madam President, in challenging times. But what is interesting is that when we look at our foreign loans component, Madam President, we were able to reduce our foreign loans component by $89.2 million between 2016 and 2017. And in addition to that, we were able to reduce our ADB debt by $23.4 million. Madam President, over that financial year, we reduced our debt by $198.7 million. But you would hear whether or not we should do debt restructuring and debt financing. And I have always said, you must pay careful attention to your debt portfolio. So when you're hearing these things about debt and the refinancing of debt and the restructuring of debt, we must know what we are talking about. But the government was able to reduce our debt significantly within that financial year. And that is an achievement, Madam President. That is an achievement. So if we want to talk about debt refinancing and restructuring, where persons use the word, interchange the word, sometimes they don't understand. They don't, because you would hear one professional say we should refinance the debt, another by Half an hour later, the same professionals here, we should restructure. There are different debt refinancing and debt restructuring are not the same, Madam President. And most of the time, when you hear about debt refinancing, Madam President, it is when a country runs into balance of payment problems. When we talk about debt restructuring, debt refinancing looks at the interest rate and gives you options. Debt restructuring, you have no options. But the persons who you owe go down a hard line. And if we look at debt restructuring programs, you would see that the countries that are held up as a benchmark for Barbados to follow have all had balance of payment problems, defaulted on the debt. St. Kitts, Greece, Belize, let's go through, Jamaica had defaults, and these are the countries that we said we should follow as far as restructuring. And every one of them had balance of payment problems. As far as I'm aware, Madam President, this Barbados, we do not have balance of payment problems. We do not. So when you hear about, but the objective is to have manageable debt when we speak to debt sustainability. That is what it is, and that is what is in this plan. Important. Important. Because you cannot manage, even in your own home, you cannot manage your debt efficiently or effectively, Madam President, without a debt management plan that is sustainable. That's the reality. So do we have a way forward for the Barbados economy? The answer is yes, Madam President. But how did we get to the 13.5 billion? I have said it, Barbados was built on honesty, hard work, and borrowed money. That's what we built Barbados on. And we have never defaulted. When we built the seaport, it was borrowed money. When we built the airport, it was borrowed money. When we built the QEH, borrowed money. When we tried to expand and build highway to way, it was borrowed money. When we look at our education infrastructure, the schools, borrowed money. When we look at policy-based loans to make the public service more efficient, Madam President, it is borrowed money. We don't have any oil and barley and wheat that you can trade to say that we're going to generate the type of funds to do our capital works infrastructure. It's borrowed money. But what the Barbados Labour Party is trying to make the people of Barbados believe, and in their efforts to discredit what I term an outstanding document, to say that it was just a shopping list, it is because that they have no plan. They have no idea. They are arming themselves like Don Quixote in the windmill. By looking at the trees in the distance and saying, let us go and attack. But Madam President, within this plan, I'm saying to this Senate and the people of Barbados, in the hearing of this Senate, that this is the plan to carry us forward. It is a recovery plan. We came through the initial stages, and the patient is now in recovery stage. We are seeing the positive signs in economic growth. And that is why the social partners sat down with government. This isn't a plan that the Democratic Labour Party and the cabinet ministers got up at Bay Street and says, we are going to write this plan, we are going to put some nice paragraphs, 100 pages, with the index and all the other things that go with it, And we are going to present this to the people of Barbados so no one would know. We're going to get a letter from everywhere, get a letter from the workers' union, get a letter from from the social partnerships, and think we could hoodwink the people of Barbados. This is not a hoodwink plan. This is not voodoo economics. This is rational thinking, positive thinking, a way forward for the people of Barbados. It says we want to enhance and safeguard the provisions for our social development, Madam President. And when it comes to social development, tell me what other party in Barbados have done more for social development than this Democratic Labour Party? Not one. Look at the blueprint of Barbados. Look at the blueprint. And this is another blueprint for Barbados. That is what this is. So, Madam President, the debt, as I said, is manageable. The government strengthened the arm of the debt unit. But this $13 billion, Madam President, didn't just happen overnight. We must remember that Barbados got its first downgrade, Madam President, in good economic times under a Barbados Labour Party government because of concerns that our debt was getting out of control. And they speak to downgrades. When we came to office, Madam President, we were at the doorsteps of junk bond status. We were sitting at the step of junk bond status. Because after B and C, well, if you're in the class, you get a C grade, you're at junk bond status. Well, if you're in class and you're accustomed getting CCs, they may allow you to stop them. As Senator Boyce, when Senator Boyce was my lecturer, Senator Boyce always say to the class, he says, if you can't pass my exams, or you can't pass how I set my work programs. Senator Boyce always used to say to us, you're not ready for A-levels, you're not an A-level student. He would always say that. But I was one who would always get an A. Senator Boyce. And what I'm saying, Madam President, is that in good economic times, Barbados had a rating of A- on its foreign currency and an A-1 on its local currency. Now, this was a Barbados Labour Party in office. And we held these ratings since 1975. Madam President, by 1999, the 17th of December, Barbados credit rating changed from an A- to a BBB+. In 2004, with a Barbados Labour Party in office, Madam President, we moved from the BBB+, and the reasons given were increasing debt burden, large current account deficits, moderate decline in foreign reserves. It says decline in foreign reserves. Our foreign reserves were declining, Madam President, since 2004 with a Barbados Labour Party in office in the best of economic times. And when we reached the office, Madam President, the reasons for that, the reasons given that for the period 1999 to 2000, Barbados debt to GDP stood at 58.2%, with total debt at $2.8 billion. By 2001, Madam President, the debt to GDP stood at 63%, an increase of 4.8%, and the debt outstanding increased to $3.256 billion. So don't let us believe that all of these problems was a result of a Democratic Labour Party in office since 2008. We faced the challenges, and that was important. That is what is important to note, is that we did not throw our hands in the air and blame the Barbados Labour Party. No. We said we are going to be honest and forthright with the people of Barbados, that we are going to tell them how the economy is functioning. The measures, despite how painful, that the measures taken is in the best interest of the country. I ask the question, if your revenues are falling, your international sector that you depend on for your revenue is in a hostile environment. The US, Canada, UK, your major source markets are declining. What measures are you going to take? You must take local measures. And we increase taxes, yes, Madam President, and it is nothing to be ashamed of. But what was the purpose? We increased VAT, add a solid waste tax. We increased the tax on, we looked at the tax on banking assets. We also applied the tax that was removed to the assets of credit unions. Yes, we removed some of the allowances to Barbadians, but it was done in the interest of protecting and stabilizing the economy because of the rapid decline in your foreign revenue. Consistent decline. And then we implemented the NSRL. And I ask the question again, if not the NSRL, what else? We had no answers. It says if not the NSRL. If not the NSRL, what else? Painful, Madam President. Painful, but necessary. Painful, but necessary. Just as the layoffs were painful, but we had to take some corrective measure. That is why I am against, Madam President, of this idea about when you cut expenditure, the first thing you go for is salaries and wages. Who make up salaries and wages? I ask the question, when you lay off 6,000 public servants, where are you going to send them? Where are you going to send them? I ask the question, I have asked that over and over again. Barbados is not the United States, where you can get in your vehicle and drive from California to Chicago, or move from Chicago up on the East Coast or the West Coast and find a job. You think you can just get up in Barbados 166 square miles and find a job? So then I'm hearing all of these technical theories, but you must understand reality. And these estimates and this sustainable recovery plan, Madam President, is the reality of Barbados. This is the reality of Barbados. This is not textbook economics. This plan has in what you call the social obligation of government. That is what it is about. That's what these estimates are about. And you must, all of us must ask ourselves, what is the social obligation of government? What is the social obligation? And I said it over and over again, that government is 98% social obligation and 2% profit. The private sector is 98% profit and 2% social obligation. So where are we going to send them? But we took the time and we reduced the deficit. And we will continue to reduce that deficit. I clearly understand, Madam President, and it seems that we tend to forget sometimes, that that during that recession under the Barbados Labour Party, 1980, and they were the first party that took us to the IMF. After running up and down the country and said that joining the IMF, you were going to sell the souls of Barbadians, trying to convince everyone that we should not join the IMF. And the first party to take us, and the longest IMF stabilization program, was under the Barbados Labour Party, and they borrowed all the money. All. They used all of the funding. So when we speak to this whole idea of cutting the expenditure, where are we going to send the individuals? Where are we going to send them? The Barbados Labour Party, back under that stabilization program, Madam President, laid off 5,000 public servants in this country. 5,000. And not only did they lay off 5,000, but they stopped the importation of motor cars for 6 months. And the challenges, the economic and financial challenges that the country faces now. When the Barbados Labour Party took the action, then the financial challenges I term was average. Foreign reserves declined. But not only that, they removed the non-contributory pensioners, and I have said it in here, removed thousands of non-contributory pensioners and placed the pensioner, moved them from the consolidated fund to the National Insurance Pension Fund. Thousands of persons who never contributed 1 penny to the national insurance. And Madam President, it has caused the national insurance to hemorrhage from then until now. From then until now, those non-contributory pensioners. And to further cut the deficit, to lower the deficit, they said if you work in the public service after 1975, you cannot get 2 pensions. That was part of the debt reducing strategy. And Madam President, thousands of public servants lose out on their treasury pension by 2 weeks, a week and a month. The actions of the Barbados Labour Party. The actions. So don't let us get carried away, Madam President, by what I call mistruths. The truth is in here. And we haven't set out to mislead and misguide the public. And if not a sustainable recovery plan, what else? Now that we came through most of the rough waters, tell me, say it to the Senate, say it to the public of Barbados. This is my plan, this is my alternative. But Madam President, you know, when mistruths and misguided statements, I don't want to say lies and propaganda, you know, when it starts to dry up, you're going to find yourself panicking. And the Barbados Labour Party, they're beginning to panic. Because, thank you, Madam President, because the untruth is beginning to dry up. So once the untruths dry up, there's nothing more to tell. Because they wanted the country, like in biblical times, when the question was asked, Madam President, do you want Jesus or Barabbas? And the crowd said Barabbas. But then everybody wanted to wash their hands when they begin to see the behavior of Barabbas. But the question to the country is that we have presented a plan. we have presented estimates that clearly demonstrate that we were able and we are continuing to manage these challenges. We are continuing to manage these challenges, Madam President. We have reduced, as I explained before, the debt in the year, significant reduction in debt, and the increase was a result of the of putting monies into the tourism sector with the projects that are going on. That, when you look at the increase, along with the contingent liabilities of the Barbados Labour Party that we had to bring to books, was part of that overall increase in debt. But outside of that, Madam President, the economy and this Democratic Labour Party, we will continue to manage. We will continue to manage, Madam President, and that is why, on those principles, we said that Barbados is not just an economy, it's a society. We said we want to manage an economy, Madam President, and the people of Barbados, an economy that is socially balanced, environmentally sound, socially balanced, environmentally sound, characterized by good governance, Madam President. And this Democratic Labour Party, within this document called the Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018, Madam President, presented to this Senate, presented to the people of Barbados, represents what we have achieved, represents a blueprint, Madam President, of the past. It represents not only a blueprint of the past, but it also represents how we have protected the present. And as a result, Madam President, of protecting the present, we have built a platform for the future in this plan. And Madam President, with those words, I'm obliged.